am delighted to be joined here by Angus Ross and Andy Winter, and we're going to be talking about a conversation when things don't happen the way you want them, then what? And I'm just going to first of all, though, introduce Angus. So Angus, hi, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi, Denise and Andy. Lovely to be here.
Lovely. So Angus's bio is, after a long career as a fashion and advertising photographer, Angus has taken to transformational coaching like a duck to water. Mentored by the world famous Pransky Associates, he has developed an insatiable appetite for helping people tap into their true potential. Angus works with people from a wide range of sectors: the defence industry, addiction, recovery, within the federal prison system and the world of sport. Angus connects with his clients in a very honest and open way, and then talks about the role of thought and how it either frees or limits us. The net result of this is that Angus's clients get a greater sense of their essential nature and experience a much higher degree of success and well-being in their lives. It sounds simple enough, but the results are often life-changing. So that's lovely, Angus, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow. You can be my warm-up man anytime, Denise.
Yeah, that was great. That was really good. My bio is like, I talk to people and sometimes it seems to help a little bit.
Yeah, let's keep things simple. I like that.
I do have a few lines and I'm going to read that. So Andy Winter has been an educator, administrator and coach for over 30 years. He encountered Dick and Bettinger and Sydney Banks 25 years ago, and his life and his work changed dramatically. Since then, he has worked with adults, children, couples, schools, athletes and teams to help them better understand their innate health and wisdom and live, work and play with greater joy. Andy is the director of the Centre for Insight and Change in Brattleboro, Vermont, where he works sharing the principles behind the human experience. He also continues his practice as a tennis pro. And I think that's pretty much like what brought us together is our love of sport.
Indeed.
So guys, welcome to the show. Our title for our conversation is, you know, when things don't happen the way we want it, then what? And I just love that, because throughout this 3 or 4 months, I found myself in all sorts of realities. And it's been fascinating to me how sometimes I've stayed in that reality, and another time it's just changed. And when I looked at it, it's like, yeah, when things don't go the way I want them to go, it brings up so much in me. So I want to kind of put that question out to each of you. And Angus, why don't you go first as to kind of what does that question bring up for you right now? Just a little brief intro.
My goodness me. Well, I think there's a tendency, and if I'm understanding what you're pointing to, is to, we kind of sort of like, our thought systems get very invested in future outcomes. And maybe to give this some extra meaning, actually, this is what's up for me, is I was working with a client yesterday, an actor, and they had a role in a movie where they were a lead, and it was their first lead role. And for months, there has been this anticipation that this is, you know, this potentially could be a career changer or a lift-off point. I guess it's all relative. This is going to really take this person to the next level. And then when they got an advanced copy of the movie, they weren't particularly happy with the results. So they got very down. And in a sense, it's like the thought systems around that really were getting into this fantasy about, you know, what it was going to look like and how great it was going to be, suddenly were not in play. The very opposite was the experience. So, you know, and I'm working with him, and really I feel my goal is kind of take him back to the impersonal rather than get so stuck in this thought system. So when I say take him back to the impersonal, you know, and you kind of, you both know what that means, but for me, it's like, just realize, and my coaching with him is like, you know, having an understanding that thought system is based on an illusion, based on all this future fantasy that wasn't fulfilled, let's say. But if I can take him back to the impersonal, he gets to a better vantage point where he can look at the whole thing philosophically. So for argument's sake, the end of this conversation, he's realizing that that was an incredible opportunity. It's good that he's working. It's good that he's got a title role in the movie. And nevertheless, he has something incredible for his show reel. So that is a more philosophical point of view. But for him to be stuck in that thought system of like, here's this anticipation, here's this expectation, here are all these standards and expectations that I'm living by that are very much a part of my sort of human thought system. But the better vantage point for me to look at my whole experience is from that impersonal level. So, it's so funny because when we first came to LA and I was kind of dragged kicking and screaming to all these sort of personal growth workshops, I kept hearing this term, which was to me just a total platitude at that point, which is like we're spiritual beings having a human experience. I find myself saying that the whole time. And basically, really, what I'm trying to, indicate to him is you're a spiritual being, but you've got fully identified with your human experience, and that has kind of let you down. So really, where you're going to start to get perspective is when you start to look back towards your spiritual experience. So I don't want to hog the time, but that's kind of like probably where I would start. That's what occurs to me to say in response to what you're pointing to. I don't know if that is in alignment with what, you're looking at.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Angus. And I love all the different terminologies that we all use. And it's brilliant, isn't it, that we talk about impersonal and different dimensions and different realms. And sometimes I will really get caught up in the sort of personal material world. And certainly as a national coach, that was very much around world rankings and qualification and what it meant if we didn't. And it was very goal oriented. And then I would kind of find myself in this much more, like you say, philosophical place of, well, let's see what's possible, let's explore, let's get fascinated by the human body and this incredible intelligence behind it. Let's see what's possible, because I don't really know. And that's the conversation that I think is really lovely. And it's that, as George Pransky would say, it's that kind of fork in the road. And what I find fascinating is that we naturally switch between those lenses all the time. And it doesn't matter how much understanding that we have of our spiritual nature, our true essence, we are switching between those two dynamics or those two lenses.
Yeah.
And the more we get to see that that's what's happening, I don't know, the kinder it gets. So, Andy, do you want to kick us off with what that title means for you?
Well, first I want to say I just loved what both of you had to say. And it's one of those experiences where whatever ideas about what I might say to start out vanished while I was listening to you two, because I just was really drawn into what you were saying. So I guess, what this sort of edge of understanding, what you're talking about has been really changing for me in the last several years in a more significant way, in a way that I didn't see it the same way, say 4 years ago. And I mean, I guess what strikes me now is that I'm going to have experience. Like that's all I know is I'm going to wake up. Well, I'm guessing I'm going to wake up, but I seem to wake up every day so far. And then I have experience. And sometimes those experiences are experiences that I'm looking for or looking forward to having. They're like the right experiences. And sometimes they're not what I expect at all. And maybe what I would then deem as a negative or as a positive. And I spent so much of my life, even early on with this understanding, and for years, I thought this understanding was supposed to help me have better experiences, right? And I was really missing some of the biggest point of this, which is that I mean, this is going to sound strange, but to some people, for sure, because the words sound strange to me when I say them, but now I'm just not, I'm interested in having my experience, and I'm not that interested in whether it's good or bad. Like I've lost interest in judging whether this is the experience I'm supposed to be having or not, because once I'm in it, I'm already having it. Like, you know, we can't unexperience what we're experiencing in a moment. And so for an athlete, you know, I used to believe like, oh, if I'm not in the right state of mind, I just need to back off and then, you know, wait until my head clears and then it'll be better, right? Well, you're a tennis player and you have 20 seconds between points. That's not much time for your head to clear. So the truth is, a lot of times anxiety might show up or will show up, and we still have to move forward anyway. We still have to act in life anyway. We still have to take care of our children. And I guess so for me, what's been really fascinating is the less attention I've paid to whether this is the experience I wanted to be having, and the more attention I pay to this is the experience I'm currently having, and how can I open up to it and be of service to this moment that I'm in. When I do that, I get what I need for the experience I'm having, and I'm not struggling with, this isn't the experience I want a different experience. You know, like I'm not struggling with either the circumstances or my thinking. I'm just present to it. And as the moment that happens, my personal thinking is less significant, and the, whatever you want to call that, the wisdom or the intelligence that's bigger and deeper than my personal thinking gives me insights or ideas or language or whatever I need, movement, whatever event it is that I'm doing in that moment. It gives me what I need to be better at that in that moment, regardless of whether it's the circumstance I wanted to be in or not. Like I don't choose to be down in a match in the third set serving, you know, one fault and it's match point my opponent. That's not, but that's the game. Like, you know, like you either, like that's not a bad situation to be in. It's just a situation. Like every other situation, it's just a moment. And so I guess, you know, I've been really enjoying seeing that that's all it ever is just a moment, and that any judgment I have about whether it's the right situation to be in or wrong situation is irrelevant, because I am where I am and I'm having the experience I'm having. And when I stop fighting that, there's a clarity that comes, even if it's just a little bit clearer than muddled, and it allows me to move in a way that's really much more helpful to the moment, you know, much more of service to, whether it's parenting, working with a client, as an athlete, it doesn't, driving a car, you know, it doesn't matter. Like the other day, just a quick story, we were driving down the road and I saw a car coming. It was a 2-lane highway, and we're moving pretty quick, you know, 100 kilometers an hour or something like that, and they are too. And I see them, the driver's texting, and they just cross the lane into our lane, right? And there's woods on either side of the road. There's no side to go off to. And so I immediately look in the woods, and what I'm looking for is, where's the path with the smallest trees, right? Because like, if I'm going to have to drive in the woods to miss this car, I don't want to hit big trees. I want to hit small trees. Now, like, so, I mean, that situation, it all happened in an instant, but as soon as I saw them, that's not the situation I wanted to be in. I didn't want to be in a situation where there's a car coming head on towards my car and my family's in the car with me and we all have a chance of dying. But that's kind of irrelevant, because that's the situation I'm in. And so then what happens is my eyes open a little wider and my vision clears a little more, and I see, well, there's really only one way out, and that's to the right. And then I just have to look for the safest way out to the right if I need to take it. And all this happened in an instant. They looked up from their text. They their car to the right, because we drive on the right here. I pulled in off the road a little bit, but not into the trees. We missed each other. And then later I talked to my family about the experience, and it was, I mean, I was just grateful that I showed up in a way that was of service to the moment we were in, instead of just fighting the fact that I don't want this car coming my way. I mean, that's a very simple experience, but I wouldn't be here potentially if I hadn't stayed clear-headed, and nor would my family.
That's lovely, Andy. Well, it's not lovely that you're in that situation. I love that analogy. I love that story and what it points to. And what occurred to me is the notion that we can be neutral, if you like, about the way in which we feel. Now, I had no eyes for that because I lived, 50 years of my life believing that what was happening inside of me as an experience was happening to me, and therefore it was significant, and therefore I needed to do something about it, or I needed to judge it. Like what do you mean, don't judge your experience? And the notion that we can have an experience and actually step back from it and actually start to identify and witness the lens through which you are projecting, if you like, this experience out into the world. That was completely new to me, because it really looks like the experience is happening to me, no matter what I am, and there is nothing that I can do about it. But when I started to see that, oh, actually, you know what, experience doesn't work that way anyway, and there is a human operating system, and the sciences completely back it up, that we are, through consciousness, projecting our realities out into the world. And I didn't have any eyes for that, and I didn't see that, yes, I'm living in a physical, practical world, and I'm in a situation. There's no denying that. But there is something around being able to step back and start to see the experience, and then to be non-judgmental about it, that it's not the one you want, or you preferred the other one, and given all the work that I've done, this should be happening. And the imagination then takes hold, and this whole story around how it is we think we should feel given the circumstances, that all starts to play out in us. And I had no eyes for that, and now I do. And the difference it's made in my life is that, like you, Andy, I kind of am grateful for the experiences that I'm having, even though sometimes, you know what, it doesn't feel very nice. But I don't fight them. I don't try to change them or control them. And the minute I step back from it, like you say, it seems that, oh, I see, I'm having an experience, and it's when my thinking changes, then my experience is going to go with it. And therefore, and as soon as I see that, all of this, I don't know, fresh new ideas seem to come forward and give me what I need in the moment. And that, for me, is very different from trying to control it, change it, judge it. And that is very different.
Mm-hmm.
So Angus, can you kind of take us on from there in terms of, the notion of experience and being neutral to it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Denise, I didn't know you were going to put me on with someone who has such a disproportionately higher level of consciousness. Because
yeah, right.
Because I haven't figured that one out yet, in the sense of being neutral with my human experience. I feel like, there are plenty of occasions for me to feel like I'm judging my human experience, and that it's challenging and difficult. And I always think of Linda Prensky. One of the things that I've heard her say is that when she has those moments of challenge and anxiety, she kind of feels like, great. She does this thing where she's teaching a group, she rubs her hands. Great, I'm going to really learn something here. Right. And I'm like sitting in that class and I think, really? Do you really mean that? And I think finally I've got to a place where I'm really starting to try that on for size. And I think what's shifted for me is when I have those moments where my experience is starting to feel challenging, I am starting to view it as a growing opportunity. And that's for me probably going in the direction of a higher vantage point, which hopefully is looking at it more through an impersonal lens, rather than for me kind of being caught up in the moment in my human experience. This is terrifying, this is awful, and this is stressful and filled with anxiety. I am actually now starting to feel like that does start to look like a check engine light. And this is now an opportunity for me to not be so caught up in that human experience. And then there is a higher perspective, a higher vantage point, and a better, more resourceful direction for me to look in. So, yeah, and I would say absolutely, Andy, I love that idea of being neutral. And I kind of like, I want that for myself, no uncertain terms. But I still find myself getting really caught up and finding that there are those old neural pathways, that old programming is wanting me to view it from that lens because of my state of mind is so stirred up. So for me, it's like, yeah, I want to look in that direction, but sometimes it's so hard to get out of it in a sense. I'm gripped by this situation and these circumstances. This is hard to deal with. But I think where I'm at now is like, yeah, there is like that little blinking light telling me, yeah, you know what? You're taking your thinking way too seriously here. Mm-hmm. There's a better resource available for you. And that will be me looking in the direction, I guess, of my spiritual north, one a better way of articulating it. But yeah, no, I love that story. It's fascinating to me too, because I think there's other thing that's interesting and it's in play in those situations. The design of our human system is all about self-regulation. So I know in those moments of like sheer, shock and despair, the body is looking to a way to like, there's something in the way, whatever hormones are secreted to slow everything down. Like people will talk about being in a car crash and it's like you go into slow motion mode. And I love that idea because it seems like, yeah, look at the intelligence in your system. Look at the intelligence behind life, looking for us to find that way to make the right decisions. And yet we can get so caught up in the sort of the hard drive, if you like, of our human experience, all that old programming, all those standards and expectations about how to show up and how to act and how to behave. But really in the moment, in real time, and Andy, I think this is what you're pointing, and I love, is you're pointing to that idea is like, no, that's not where I make my best decisions. I make my best decisions in that quiet, in that clarity, and in that slowing down. And there, lo and behold, is like our body systems are designed to point you in that direction. And all we got to do is kind of not obviously literally take your hands off the wheel in that moment, but take the hands off the wheel of your intellectual rumination, however immediate that is. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, let's follow our wisdom. And Denise, you said there are these two channels. And for me, those channels, there's wisdom, and then there's the intellect. There's the intelligence that comes with the intellect, just a super hard drive full of information and data. And then there's wisdom. And that's what we want to surrender to. And I imagine in that moment, Andy, you have the understanding is like, yeah, that is where I surrender. And I love that. I really see that and aspire to that. And I hope to get to that level at some point.
No.
maybe I'm going to have to be coached by you. Maybe this is what's going to come out of this whole thing.
Yeah, no, I don't want to. I'm really glad you said that because I don't want to imply in any way that I don't get completely caught up in my experience. I guess what I was pointing to is like, I sort of don't care that I do anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like, I'm just not. Like I'll get caught up and I won't even know I'm caught up. But the moment that I see it, I just don't care. Like, it's just not, it's like, oh, there I go again. But it's not like, oh, there I go again, or that's the wrong thing to do. It's sort of like I innocently get busy with whatever judgment I'm having about my experience of life and it not being the way I think it should, or my president's not behaving the way I think he should, or, you know, whatever it might be. There's a lot of that going on. People are suffering and they shouldn't be, you know, and then I'll have this whole experience of that. And the moment I just notice that I'm having an experience, I'm okay with the fact that I'm having it. Like, it's not, I'm just not judging it like it's wrong.
Yeah.
See, and that's the relief. It's not that I'm at a different level. I might even still be right there, but I just see that it's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's just this temporary experience. It's like I didn't walk into the wrong movie theater. You know, and I'm watching a movie and it's not the one that I wanted. I mean, I have that experience like, well, this isn't the movie I want to be seeing, but it's my life. Well, now that happens so much that I just don't, it just doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
And that bother, since the bother's gone, I don't wrestle with it. Like there's nothing to fix. I guess that's what I feel like now, is there's nothing wrong with me by doing that. And there's nothing wrong with any of us for getting caught up. It's so natural. It's happened so easily. And like Denise was just saying, and you were saying it, but the moment we see that, there's that philosophical, or that zooming out, or this wisdom, all those things are pointing to the same thing, this view that allows us perspective, that it's like, I mean, it literally for me is like when I used to live in the Virgin Islands, and I would go snorkeling and spearfishing all the time. And sometimes, you know, there'd be storms and it's rough, and I'm, you know, and like you put your face above water and it's like, it's chaos. And the moment you put your face down below, it's just like, it's like the sea fans are going back and forth. And then you look up again, you just, you know, and we're talking just change the angle of your eyeballs. And the ocean, the surface of the ocean is not the ocean, right? That's just the surface. The ocean is this massive thing that's pretty hard to do too much to it. You know, it's steady. And I feel like I know that about life, and I know that about me, and that anytime I'm having this agitated experience, it's not that I'm not having it, and it's not that I shouldn't be having it. I'm just having it. It's just weather at the surface, but it has nothing to do with the depth. It has nothing to do with, and that I know the moment, whatever you want to call it, that I have the opportunity to look beyond that surface, I'm going to see, or get, if you will, a perspective that's like, I don't want to say perfect for the moment I'm in, but if I show up, if I let go of, if I don't care about my personal experience, I am given what I need in the direction of like the best I can be in the moment for whatever it is I'm doing. I mean, that's just how it works. That's why some days I'm a fantastic parent, and sometimes I'm not. Every day I try to be a great dad. I mean, it's like, and some days I'm really good at it, and some days, you know, if you ask my daughter, who loves me dearly, she'd be like, "Dad, you missed the mark today." You know, like, that's okay. It happens. And if I do, I apologize, and I, you know, but we just get this fresh start.
Yeah.
Every moment we get this fresh start, if we don't believe our experience is the wrong one we're having.
I love that, and I think that I feel like that's my growing edge too. Is the less I take my human experience seriously when I do get caught up, and see my own psychological innocence in that respect, then I kind of move beyond that suffering that really was a part of that experience. But I love the fact that you shared that story about snorkeling, because I have a similar experience, and it's a metaphor that I use in terms of looking within. And we were in the Caribbean before this whole COVID thing hit, just before it hit, so we were able to have a nice vacation. But Rainey and I love snorkeling, and we went with a party, and we went out onto, I guess, a spit of this island, and it was really rough. But because we're kind of avid snorkelers, and we're not going to miss out on this experience, and probably paid good money to have this experience, it's like, well, we're going to get in that water, you know, we're like, I don't care how rough it looks. But everybody else in the boat, they just weren't having it. We're not going to do it. We're not going to get in the water. It's way too rough. So ultimately what happened is Rahini and I are the only people got in the water, but with the guide. So we had basically this VIP tour with this really skilled guy. And you're right, as soon as you put your head underwater, it's completely calm. And above water, it looked like all hell was breaking loose. It looked really choppy and the boat's all over the place and it's, you know, there's a high wind. But underwater, it was so calm. And it's just like that is what we're pointing to, is to look to that calm beyond our human experience. Looks all agitated and the wind's blowing and it's full of static, etc. But to have that different perspective, that different channel, and have an awareness that there is that different channel, that for me now feels like my growing edge. And I love that you're pointing to it, and you've had probably a lot more experience in looking in that direction than me. For me now, I'm starting to see, yeah, you know what? That's where I now have reference points where I calm down. I can see when I can observe my human experience, not take it personally or seriously, like even in relationship, but there's an obvious example. In the past, you know, we'd have our human experiences, we'd lock horns, and then we'd do battle. That battle could go on for weeks. Now we're like, 5 minutes later, oh, we just got caught up. See the psychological innocence in that, and then like, yeah, we can let that go. It's not a problem. We were just caught up in our human experience. There's a much greater resource at our disposal where, you know, in that quiet, we'll figure things out. And that's kind of like what I hear you saying. It's like, you know, you've got things figured out in that way. It's like, yeah, I don't have to, you know, I'm getting caught up. Okay, I got caught up. I will get caught up. I'm a human being. I'm going to have those moments. But there is this gravitational force that's kind of taking me back to that impersonal level where I have perspective and I can be more philosophical.
I love that. I really love that, guys. What a beautiful conversation. It's really rich. And I think what's coming up for me there as well is I love your fresh start, and as not an idea, Andy, but as the way it works. Right. You know, we don't have to give ourselves permission to have a fresh start, or again believe that we should, or buy into that notion. That is the way we operate. Every moment we get to wake up to the fact that our perspective is changeful. And I just laugh so sometimes about how caught up I get about how it is I think things should be. And certainly how I think James should be behaving on furlough at the moment during this lockdown. And it's not getting up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, having a little bit of lunch and going back to bed, and then surfacing again at, 7 o'clock, doing a little bit of dinner, and then gaming all night.
Sounds amazing.
You gotta figure it out.
I need to speak to him.
Isn't it funny? The reality is I keep switching in as a parent to should I be doing something else? Should I be my experience? It goes from feeling really anxious to then feeling a bit more philosophical. Well, he'll find his way. He's doing what occurs to him right now in this moment. And actually, you know what? He's healthy, he's fine, he's at home, he's cooks the dinner. And then I would just keep flitting between these I don't know, these different lenses, these different worlds of, and my experience changing the whole time. And it's fascinating how I don't have to get caught in any one of them, because that's how experience works. We are not this changeful, arbitrary story we tell ourselves. I had this gruesome analogy actually, and I'm going to quickly share it. It's when we I love a bit of gruesome. If you took the brain and you chopped it in half after you've passed, you know, you look inside and you don't see all those stories, those beliefs, those judgments, those experiences. They're not there. and it's like, wow, how much more evidence do you need, Denise, to see that we're living in this wonderful, if you like, illusion that consciousness gives us. This, you know, this we live in this play the whole time, and at any moment we can wake up to the fact of that and actually start on another play and being another role. And you get that fresh start that you were talking about. And let's just, I think, let's maybe spend some time just pointing in that direction of this incredible thing, this incredible life force, if you like, that we've got going for us as human beings. Because I know that some of our listeners will, you know, people are going through stuff right now and things don't look the way they want it. And I have a lot of heart for that. And I have a lot of heart for all of the pain that people are going through. And it might be a really nice place for us to go in terms of, well, what have you got going as an amazing creature, an amazing creative, you know, human being? And I think to start to look at what's obviously going on for us, but we don't tend to see it. We don't tend to see this genius that's happening inside of us and of us. So yeah, I mean, Angus, do you want to just here you go, like this wisdom, this, we know instinctively that we're not running the show. Like, we're not, where is this thought factory, you know, putting thoughts in our heads? We know we're not doing that. All right, something else is going on. And it seems that we're designed for life. Like, we're designed to wake up to how it works. And some of us get to see more about that than others. How can we help our listeners to look more in the direction of their amazing genius?
Wow, that's a big one.
Take it away, Angus.
Gee, thanks. Well, look, I guess, you know, what occurs to me to say in this moment is I have a couple of young clients who are gamers, you know, like they play computer games. And that's something that, unfortunately, that I never got into, but I could see that I may well have done had I not had the good sense to ignore that opportunity. I think it was in the 80s, where I had a friend who had bought Super Mario, you know, that computer game, Super Mario. So I went over to his apartment one night and he says, "Here, take it away. I don't want this anymore." And I stupidly took it away, took it home, and then spent the next 3 weeks, every waking moment. I didn't get any work done. I was playing this game. But what was interesting about Super Mario, and I think it's similar with a lot of computer games even today, is that there are these sort of different levels that you go through, these different worlds, and you get proficient at one level, one world, then you'll find your way into the next one, then you find your way into the next one. But at some point, when you fail in that world, you fall right back down to square one. So I was starting to think, well, isn't that interesting to consider? That's kind of could be analogous about how conscious works. And maybe in a sense, if we think of, like, you know, a human experience being this virtual experience, which is maybe in service to the impersonal, that maybe the programming that we put ourselves through, and programming would be all those neural networks, you could say, is analogous with the code that we write, that we store away in our super hard drive. Is it perhaps possible to think that that character, Super Mario, let's say my ego is that avatar in that computer game, and my role in this world is to just continue to learn and hopefully grow in consciousness? And this is something that I've tried on exercise lately and started to consider more, but it makes me think that really what I'm really wanting to do here, if I run with this metaphor, I'm probably going to flog it to death. I want to be more, I want to be more of the observer rather than that egoic avatar in that game. I want to be the gamer. I don't want to be the game. That's not my identity or reality. But I think in a sense where we suffer as a human being is we really identify with that game, that virtual reality, and we make that our reality. And the fact is it's not. The fact is that all the creativity, all of the magic is in that more mystical realm where, you know, that's the source of our inspiration. You know, I often start my groups at the treatment center and I use that Einstein quote. We're still kind of trying to figure out if it is, I think it's attributed to Einstein, but I won't go into that. But I love it anyway. But it's this idea, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind a willing servant. And yet we, as a society, honor the servant and have forgotten the gift. Yeah. And that to me just basically says it all. It's like we're living in this virtual reality that is us honoring the servant, and we've completely forgotten the sacred gift, which is where all of our new thought inspiration comes from. We take our lead from there, and really that little avatar, that ego of ours, should be in service to that. It shouldn't be serving itself. And I think that's generally where we go wrong. And I feel like, for me, that's, you know, I use that quote as a sort of starter point to have a conversation with people that are new to this understanding, but I feel like I can really build on that, because I can then ask them as like, you know, well, you know, intuition, do you not feel like there's a better resource for you than perhaps everything that's stored away up here that hasn't worked thus far? And then it kind of goes on from there. So I don't know if that's me going off on a crazy tangent in terms of what you were asking. You put me on the spot. So that's where I'm going.
It's beautiful. I love that, actually.
I did too.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well done. That's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I have one client, this young man, he said, like just before COVID hit, I don't know if they have those where you are, but they're just starting to open these virtual reality centers where you're given these Oculus glasses and a suit. And then you get to go and play in this, like, I guess it's like a warehouse, but you know, you have this experience where you literally step into another world. And at some point he was saying, you just literally forget, you know, you're not in this world. This is your reality. And I think that's what we do as human beings. We just forget that this is not our reality. This is just our human experience. And there's a whole other bigger picture in play, and we need to look in that direction.
Yeah.
So that's my 10 cents.
Yeah, no, hey, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
Take it away, Andy.
So,
no, I really
amazing genius. Go for it.
No, I love that. I just you tied that together really, really nicely at the end. And I feel like, I mean, that sort of describes my experience of my life. Most of it is you know, like when I think I thought I was, I mean, this is, you know, the words just don't cut it for some of what we're talking about, because words come from the place that we're trying to describe. You know, it's like, we're trying to describe something that's upstream from words. You know, that's like the source of thought, the source of our experience. And we're trying to use words to describe something that's not fully describable. So I may say some things that maybe just don't make sense at all anyway, but don't sound like they make sense. But one of the things that just really struck me that you were saying, Angus, is that I still do this, is I think of myself as Andy. Like the idea Andy, the avatar Andy, he's good at this, he's bad at that, he's good at, you know, like he has these abilities, he's dyslexic, he's like all these different, like as if all these experiences that I've had and rated and other people have judged are Andy. And I live as if that's true. And I lived most of my life as if it was absolute, because I didn't realize that Andy was a figment of my imagination. Right? I mean, like, and that may not make sense to people, but meaning like that this idea of Andy and what he's supposed to be and what he can do and what he can't do and all that, it's been profoundly limited by my belief in the experiences I've had so far, determining what I can do or can't do. And I feel like the more we can, you know, like you go to these video games and you're looking at the screen, right? And there's a million things happening, and the avatar or Super Mario is like jumping and running, and it's like bedlam. But you watch the gamer and they're like super calm, right? They're like, if they're in bedlam, Mario dies, right? I mean, if they're frantic, then chaos ensues, and whatever they fail on screen. They fail in that world. So they're not frantic, right? They know that. They know that you can't be frantic and do well. And so they don't. They just get quiet, or whatever that means, and then they live in, and they enter that other world. And they know they're not that person that they're being, but they lose themselves to it. Well, I didn't know I wasn't the person that I was losing myself to. I thought I was the image that other people had of me and that I had of me. And so I lived within that envelope and I'd be like, oh, I can make a little improvement here. I can make a change here. And you know, when I look back now, I'm just not, it's not the same. I'm not the same. It's the same energy. It's the same intelligence that allows me to create my experience. But my gratitude for it and my faith that like I have what I need for the moment I'm in, that changes the game. It changes the game entirely, because I know that even if I'm caught up, it doesn't matter. Even if I'm scared, it doesn't matter. That like, that doesn't actually cut off this source of intelligence. That's a product of it. For whatever reason, that's what's showing up. But that my experience I'm having doesn't define who I am, because it's not really who I am. It's just the experience I'm having. The good ones too, though. See, that's the thing. Like, ego is not just like, oh, I'm good, I'm bad. It's like that whole idea. When I say the idea of Andy, that's ego. That's like anything that I think of about how the world is and how I am. That's all this, my imagination. And I guess just I have so much faith in our capacity to create that, and that it's not who we are. We're the capacity. We're not the images that are projected. We're not the experiences that we have had, or the fears that we might have, or the worries. Well, that's not us. We're the capacity for that. And so just knowing that, it feels like the game has sort of changed. Like I used to think you could lose the game of life somehow. But now I don't believe you can. Even if that would have been my last moment driving down the road, I got choked up just thinking about not seeing my family. But you know, even if something were to happen and I am removed in form in this world as a living being, Andy, I'm so grateful for the experience that I've had, and then I'm here, and like I don't see that even as wrong. Like I do everything I can to stay alive, but I don't. But I know that sooner or later that something else is going to happen. It's inevitable. I mean, as far as I can see, that's true. Is that this form and this experience I'm having, it's going to change in a profound way at some point or another, and it might be tomorrow, and it might be 30 years out, and I don't know. But I know that while I'm here, I just generate experience, and that this capacity to do that is that's the miracle. It's boundless and messy, and I don't know. Yeah, words fail me right now.
That's beautiful.
That is so beautiful.
And it really, we're almost coming up to the, nearly sort of 8 more minutes, and it sort of brings us all the way full circle. And we started with the title, When Things Don't Happen the Way You Want It, Then What? And the then what for me is, and has been in this last 7 years, has been very much looking to the enormity and the phenomenon of this source, this incredible capacity for us to have a new thought, to have a new feeling in any given moment. But not only that, it's the capacity to wake up to what's going on. And I have had this massive shift since my mum passed away kind of unexpectedly last November. And her passing has given me this incredible gift to understand at a deeper level the essence and this source that we are in these bodies. We live in these time bodies, and then the body is no more. But it's really brought me much closer to this creative potential in all of us to have these experiences whilst we're in these time bodies. And it's the fact that I can now rely on it. I didn't used to rely on it. Like when, if I didn't like the way I felt, or I didn't know what to do in a situation, I didn't have a go-to place. I thought, like you say, the ideas of Denise, I thought that I was the one that had to work it all out, and it was on me. And that was scary. And now I completely see that the experience is a creation of this energy, this source, this consciousness, this God consciousness that we all are. And that it's almost ridiculous to think that I'm doing that. like I can really see that I'm kind of being done, and that if I just orient myself towards this incredible design that we are, and the fact that I'm not making myself breathe, I'm not making myself think, I'm not, the blood's flowing through my body, I'm not doing that. There's something else doing that, that's creating psychology in me. And that if I orient myself towards that magnificence, I can rely on it, because that's all that's going on. And as soon as I think that I'm doing that, and that I'm responsible for it all, and I'm accountable for it all, and I don't like the way I'm feeling, and I'm judging it, then as soon as I get down into that personal where we started, Angus, then that really becomes quite insecure for me. And the security and the certainty is very much looking in the direction of what we've got going for us as these incredible beings that have existence in kind of what Sid said. Sydney Banks, who's the founder of this understanding known as the three principles, said that, we are, being suspended in time, space, and matter. And if we look towards that intelligence, then it seems that that's where the juice is. It kind of takes the pressure off, that there is this resource that's just, like you say, boundless resource, unlimited potential that's just designed to come through us. Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. That seems like it's a really cool place to stop.
Yeah.
So if you would like to get hold of Angus, Angus is on angus.jc.ross@gmail.com. And if you'd like to get hold of Andy, he's on winter.andy@gmail.com.